We're now joined via Zoom by legal analyst Reitumetsi Benedict Phiri to weigh in on the work of this independent panel and the responsibility that it has been tasked with. A very good afternoon to you. It's always a pleasure to see you, sir.
Good afternoon, Flo, and it's a pleasure to be on the show.
I think it's best we start, from the beginning, really, and just sort of rewind. Obviously the former spy boss Arthur Fraser claimed that, he had evidence that the president had concealed a crime on his farm. Let's go through the allegations that, Fraser had leveled against President Ramaphosa, that this panel will now obviously have to really look into.
Yes, I think, Arthur Fraser's allegations are the only ones that we really have on record at the moment. And essentially, he alleges a number of things which are really important. The first is that there was foreign currency under the president's furniture, which suggested that the foreign currency had not been declared in accordance with the South African Reserve Bank's exchange control manual. Secondly, he suggests that, the president's helper conspired with the burglars, and when that was actually found out, the president may have instructed some of his staff to ensure that the crime was concealed, and through the payment of bribes of about 150,000 rand each to any other person, which then suggests a crime of corruption. And thirdly, he suggests that, in fact, this crime of its own, the theft of its own, as well as the bribery, were not reported to the police as would be required in terms of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, which in of itself is an offense under that particular statute, which then also suggests that the president or those that were around this particular set of events have committed offences under the PRECA Act.
Yeah, there have been a lot of questions raised about the evasiveness of the question, but on the back of that, there have also been questions about whether or not the president was actually obliged to declare the business dealings or deals happening on his farm. And of course, on the back of that also is the issue of, a sitting president not actually being supposed to be, dealing in business in any way. Let's iron out all those particular issues. Where does the president stand, and what essentially is his argument going into this?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Executive Members' Ethics Acts, which when you read together with the Constitution, essentially the president is precluded from, firstly, undertaking any paid work, and secondly, doing anything that's inconsistent with the office of the president. And he has to also avoid a risk of a conflict between his private interests and his official activities. So if we, take what the president has said to say he is a farmer and these proceeds were in respect of his business activities that he'd conducted, then there's clearly a question mark around whether the Executive Ethics Code is implicated directly, because he should not be doing any he should not be undertaking any paid work. So, I think that is a problematic statement from the president himself. And then again, if you look at the Constitution and his oath of office specifically, which is to uphold not only the Constitution as a supreme law, but the laws of the country, if it is true that those foreign currency amounts were not declared to the Reserve Bank, and that there may have been instances of corruption that may not have been reported even on a suspicion, then it really puts the president in the crosshairs of being potentially seriously, in violation of the laws of the country, which would trigger the Section 89 grounds for his impeachment.
Let's talk about this particular panel, this three-person panel. Former Chief Justice Sandile Ngcobo, Gauteng High Court Judge Thokozile Masipa, as well as Advocate Mahlape Sello. I mean, this is these are strong names. Obviously, is this a panel that we can really put our faith in as a public, and could they rule against the president? Some have argued that this is a panel that's not likely, in fact, to make any adverse rulings against the president.
Well, certainly from, my understanding of the people on that panel, they are reputable, and I expect them to be able to assess the allegations and come to, the only conclusion they really need to come to at this particular point in time is whether it can be said from a prima facie basis that the president is potentially guilty of serious misconduct or of seriously violating the law or the constitution. So, I think when you look at the scope of that particular finding, I think that is a finding that this panel can particularly make when you consider the type of allegations that the president is facing. I do expect that this panel will also seek input from the various other processes that are underway, including the public protector process, which is looking at the executive members' ethics code, as well as the Hawks investigation to the extent that that may have kicked off as well as the South African Reserve Bank investigation into the exchange control violations potentially.
All right, Reitumetsi, thanks very much for giving us your time then. That is legal analyst Reitumetsi Benedict Phiri weighing in on the work of the panel that is, of course, starting its work. Independent panel responsible, of course, and being tasked with assessing what, in fact, happened at the president's Phala Phala farm.